Hi and welcome. I'd like to thank everybody. We've gotten to 1,200 subscribers, which is very exciting. I've been working on translations of some preschool CTA books, but then I decided a couple of days ago to revisit the Advanced Fluent Tibetan Dialogues by Geshe Thupten Jinpa. And I think I've made a couple more breakthroughs after several years of trying to get through this with a consistent way to show the English vocabulary, the transition, the interlinear transition. So I'm going to share with you all. I believe it's going to be beneficial for you. I think it's very helpful for me, at least. The link to the original book is going to be in the description. It's also at my resource page, which you can find easily from the YouTube channel. And I haven't found any place to purchase that book yet, but I would encourage you to buy other books by Geshe Thupten Jinpa and also Jeffrey Hopkins, who I believe helped with this text. And those links, like I say, will be in the description box, and you can find them on my resource page. There's also audio files of Geshe Thupten Jinpa reading the Tibetan, and I made some English ones as well. You can also find that at my resource page. So that will be the easiest one to learn from for listening to the Tibetan with a native speaker. Speaking here, I'm going to just be going through it slowly with the vocabulary. And I'll explain some of my new conventions that I've developed a couple days ago. So it should be pretty well in line with what I've been doing recently. In any case, let's get started. So Tashidelek, auspicious goodness. You have heard that many times, I'm sure, by now. Hello. Nge Ming Mary Ying. So my name, Mary Being. And the being here is underlined. Essentially, what I've done is the yin and re, I usually translate as being. And now I've added the underline for the egophoric form or the I form, just to make it more clear in the English which you need to reconstruct from the Tibetan. So I did an underline, not because it's more important, but I just figured putting an underline around the individual makes more sense as kind of a delimiting thing or sign rather than the open one, which is for everybody else. So my name, Mary Being. My name's Mary. I think that just generally speaking, you'll see throughout, it's much easier to work your way back and forth from the English to the Tibetan with this vocabulary. So Kong Paul Re, he Paul Being. This is Paul. The English I've closely kept to what was in Geshe Thupten Jinpa's original translation. Generally speaking, I've made a few adjustments just based on what I assume people would say naturally. So the translation is not as close to the English vocabulary as possible as I sometimes do. This is a more natural English sentence since I've now found this kind of convenient connect the dots version in the middle. So you can always make your own translation with slightly different wording as you see fit, as you learn your own way of interpreting. Kerangi, your, Tsenla, name, Kare, what, Shugiye, na. So Shugiye na, I'm translating it as calling, existing, but it's really just to reflect what the actual particles are there. So Shugiye na, Shugiye is like calling or calling. That's all it is. It's like the present form of calling, but it uses ye, which is normally existing, egophoric. So that's why it's underlined there. And that's just, again, just as a sign to go back to the original ye. And the na is the question particle. Normally it's nam if you see it written in literary style, but spoken, the ma usually disappears. So I think the convention has been to drop it in the writing as well. Nga tenzin yin, I Tenzin being, I'm Tenzin. Nga di sane, This is land abiding. Dönche Kangi, welfare determination houses. Leche Bayin, work doer being. So I'm a civil servant at the Office of Tibet here. Scroll down a bit. Kare sunya yöna. What saying to existing? So, I suppose you have an alternative here. What can I do for you is normally what you would say in English. You could also say something like, what do you have to say? But that's not exactly right in this context. So what can I do for you? Works better. Ngani Gyakarla. So us too, India too. Kungsen la, intermediate gap 4. Draw Ken, going agents. I've put Ken consistently as agents throughout. I find it's usually helpful for the way that I think about it. So I hope you will also find it useful. Draw Ken, going agents. You can think of it as goer instead if you find that more simple. Yin, being. So we are going to India on holiday. Just as a note, I will make this text available on my webpage as well so that you can go through it on your own and mark it up as you like in your own style. Gyakarla, India at. Pemi, Tibet people. Tsenchowa, warlike spirit avoiding. Tsenchowa, so warlike spirit avoiding ers. I put ers instead of people in this case as the wa. Mangbo, many. Yore, existing being. And a note here. I sort of had another breakthrough mentally this weekend, which is Yore normally gets translated as there are or there is. And I think it's quite elegant thinking about it as Yore because you have the personal perspective, like so Ye being it exists and it has a personal side, and then Re is the general fact side. So I've started thinking of it as Yore is I know it and also everybody else knows it. So it's a general fact that I know and everybody else knows. So there's both, it's kind of unifying the personal and the general together. So Yore. Sergindu. So Sergindu is the calling or declaring. Often it's declaring, sometimes it's calling. You'll see it both ways here, so don't get confused. Sometimes ser is most useful to think of as declaring, but in some contexts, it really is just calling in English. So I kept it as calling sometimes. So we've heard that there are many Tibetan refugees in India. Ngani Gyakarla, we too, India at. Ye tu, existing time. So when, time when in this context. Hebe, Tibetan. Shikar, native encampments or communities. Kashila, few at. Takor, seeing around or sightseeing. Jo, going. Tubna, able if. Samgindu, thinking. And thinking dash existing is just the sign that it's samgindu, so thinking. We were wondering whether we would be able to visit some Tibetan communities when we're in India. Yine, but, Höbe, Tibetan, Shikar, native encampment, Sacha, place, Kabar, where, when you double the where, it's indicating that it's plural. So settlements, native encampment places, because of the where. Yöme, existing or not existing. Tang, and. Kandres, how. Do, going. Go, needing. Me is not existing, but in this context, it's contrasting with the go. So go me, as in needing or not needing. Jiang, whatsoever. Gu, familiarity. Me, not existing. So, but we're not familiar at all with where the Tibetan settlements are or how to get there. Nganila, us to at. Netsul, topic process. Totsam, bit. Sungronang, telling, helping, doing. Would you please give us some information? Kerangi, you too. Yakarla, India too. Kadu, when. Pega, going. When are you two going to India? Yakarla, India too. Nguma, before. Peb, going. Yonge, experiencing. Have you been to India before? Nga dromanyung, I going, not experiencing. Yine, Paul dronyung, but Paul going, experiencing. Yore, existing being. I haven't been, but Paul has been there. Nga tingma chik, I times one, dronyung, going, experiencing. I went once. Yine, but, tedu, that time. Tudzu, time amount. Mangbo, much. Metsang, not existing since. Dili, Delhi's. Nyekor, nearness, around. Matok, not including. Sacha, places. Shendak, other. La, at. Chin, going. Me, not existing. But I didn't have much time then, so I didn't go anywhere except around Delhi. Tiendra Sonzang, that similar happening since, or so. Ngar, me at. Gyakar, India. Yakpo, good. Gu, familiarity. Me, not existing. So I don't know India well. Gyakar Nala, India in at. Pöbe, Tibetan. Shikar, native encampments. Mangbo, many. Yore, existing being. There are many Tibetan communities in India. Pömi, Tibet people. Mangbo, many. Hlochok, south direction. La, at. Shichak, native attached. Kak, groups. Mangbo, many. Yore, existing being. There are a lot of settlements in the south with many Tibetans. Tene, that from. Gyakar, India. Sane, places abiding. Orissa, Assam. Orissa, Assam. Bomdila, Darjeeling. Bomdila, Darjeeling. Kalimpuk, Simla. Kalimpong, Simla. Masuri, Rajpur. Masuri, Rajpur. Dharamsala, Che. Dharamsala, listing. Sacha, places. Kak, groups. Mangbor, many at. Pumi, Tibet peoples. Shikar, native encampments. Existing being. Yore, existing being. Then there are Tibetan communities in many Indian regions. Orissa, Assam, Bomdila, Darjeeling, Kalimpong, Simla, Mussoorie, Rajpur, and Dharamsala. So just a note about the Che. The Che here, listing, it comes after a list of things. So that's going to come up a few times here. We might have reviewed that in previous videos as well, but just to understand that the Che comes after a list of things. Dili la, Delhi at. Pöbe, Tibetan. Shikar, native encampment. Yo, Marbe, existing not being. Isn't there a Tibetan community in Delhi? Yore, existing being. Dili la, Delhi at. Pöba, Tibetans. Karo, some helpings. Yore, existing being. Yes, there is. There are plenty of Tibetans in Delhi. Kongzo, they. Mangchewa, most. Dili, Delhi. Nyingbar, old at. Dögi yore, staying, existing being. So again, this makes reference to just staying, and the yore is just kind of the tense marker in this case, generally known as existing in the present tense. Most of them live in Old Delhi. Ani, colon, Pöbe, Tibetan, Tsenchu, warlike spirit avoiding, Shung, government, Kabar, where, Yore, existing being. So where is the Tibetan refugee government? Te, that, Pelcher, probably, Gyalwa, Victor, Rinpoche, precious, Kabar, where, Shu, Yone, staying, existing, whatever, Ter, there, Yogire, existing being. There's a good grammar section of Geshe Thupten Jinpa's book, and I will probably do a separate video on that for expressions like Yogire and so on. The corresponding ones that you can learn on their own. I think that would likely be wherever the Dalai Lama lives. Riba, being. Tenzin la, Tenzin, acknowledging, or Tenzin dear. Right, Tenzin la? Tere, that being. Right. Gyalwa Rinpoche, Victor Precious, Dharamsala at. Shugyore, staying, existing being. The Dalai Lama lives in Dharamsala. Dharamsala, Kabar, where, Yore, existing being. Where is Dharamsala? Dili ne, Delhi from, Taringbo, Ribe, far being. Is it far from Delhi? Dili ne, Delhi from, Taringbo, far, Shedra, very, Mare, not being. It's not very far from Delhi. Dili ne, Delhi from, Changchokla, north direction at, Meli Sumgya, miles 300, Yeme, up down or more or less, Shik a, Drogure, going, needing, being. I guess we don't need the dashes here. I'll take those out. You need to go about 300 miles north of Delhi. Bus, Nangla, in at, Drona, going if, Chudze, Chongni, Tsam, hours 12 about, Gorgire, taking, being. And so here you'll notice that the gi I've done as showing as just a dash because it doesn't really help to show it as anything else. It's really just connecting the gorg and the re and showing that it's generally speaking the future used for this construction. So gorgire, will take, but in English it doesn't. We don't need to say it will take. Usually we say it takes. So by bus it takes about 12 hours. Or you could say by bus, it will take about 12 hours. It's perfectly fine also. Delhi ne, Delhi from, Rili, train or rail train. Menkor you might also hear for train, but really in this is here as being used. Yomarabe, existing, not being. Isn't there a train from Delhi? Really, yore, train, existing, being. Te, that. Sharjak, straightway shooting. Yomare, existing, not being. There's a train, but it isn't direct. Really drona, train going if. Patenkor, patencoat, hub, descending. Tene, that from. Yangna, then if. Basitang, bus and. Temina, that not being if. Taxi, taxi. Nangla, in at. Drogure, going, needing, being. By train, you get off at Patankot. Then, if there's a bus, take that. Otherwise, you'll need to take a taxi. Rilite, train that. Jamur, Jammu at. Droken, going agent. Tere, that being. The train is the one to Jammu. Patinkor ne, Patinkot from. Dharamsalar, Dharamsala to. Droken, going agent. Buses. Mangbo, many. Yore, existing, being. Many buses go from Patankot to Dharamsala. Pelcher, probably. Chudze, hour. Rere la, each at. Rere, each. Yongwa, cominger. Ye, existing. So this Yongwa, I'm translating as cominger in line with that other video that I posted from the other gentleman's channel that talked about how pa or wa often gives this agency, which I kind of like this idea now. I'm liking this idea. So yongwa ye, a cominger is existing. So a bus, meaning a bus, the one coming or the bus coming, making reference to it as a noun instead. So there's one about every hour. Droyun, going direction. Chudzu, hours. Sum, 3. Tsam, about. Yimba, being or existing. The trip takes about 3 hours. So in this case, the being or reference to the trip being. So it's a trip that takes about 3 hours, you could say also. Yine, but. Kerangi, you too. Tabdewa, easy. Chegiyina, doing, being, if. Tingsang, these days. Diline, Delhi from. Dharamsalar, Dharamsala to. Namdru, airplane. Sky vessel, skyboat, airplane. Yore, existing, being. Sergindu, declaring, existing. But if you want to go the easy way, they say there's a flight nowadays from Delhi to Dharamsala. Namdrute, airplane that. Gagal, Gagal. Serken, calling agent. Serkengi, calling agents. Sacha, place. Ter, there. Pub, or pubgire, descending, being, or will descend. The plane lands at a place called Gagal. Tene, that from. Dharamsala, Dharamsala. Hagnyebo, distance short. Sheda, very. Re, being. From there, Dharamsala isn't far. Mota, car or vehicle. Schön, straddling. I've heard some Tibetans say that it's better to use dro, like going, instead of straddling, because you don't really straddle a car. So you can keep that in mind when using schön. It might be more colloquial, like just familiar to use schön because it's easy to use in many different contexts. But technically in English, it means straddling. So again, it's you straddle a horse or a bicycle rather than a car or an airplane. So 주제, hour, 직, one, sak, more than, korgimare, taking not being, sergindu, declaring existing. They say it takes less than an hour by car. Namdru, airplanes, tikisi, ticket, te, that. Tibane, around here from, nyo, buying, tubgirve, able being. Can you buy that plane ticket from here? Te dang, that and, namjute, airplane that, nindar, day every, yuba yinam, or yuba yina. Take out the ma here. Yuba yina. Existing or being. Oh, and is there a flight every day? Ngar, I at, or me at. Selpo, clear. She, knowing. Yak, good. Me, not existing. I don't know for sure. Naning, last year. Nga, I. Dharamsalar, Dharamsala 2. Draw to, going time. Namjute, airplane that. Mindo, not existing. Last year, when I went to Dharamsala, the flight didn't exist. Just a reminder, if you're curious why mi duk is pronounced minduk, that ao in front of the duk is a nasalizing effect. He, that, talam, now path, or current path. Nyechar, recently. Gotsuk, starting. Dro, going. Re, being. The route started up recently. Or I guess you could say the route going currently started up recently. Nge, me by. Koyala, hearing to at. Namjute, airplane that. Gyakar, Nangkul, India, domestic. Droken gi, going agents. Indian, Indian. Airlines, airlines. Kongtok, belonging, including. Mare, not being. Sergindu, declaring existing. So you'll see that Indian Airlines has just been phonetically transcribed in the Tibetan there. They say that it doesn't belong to the domestic Indian airline, Indian Airlines. Namdru Chungwa, airplane smaller. Tei, that's. Re, kind. Re, being. Sergindu, declaring existing. They say it's a smaller type of plane. Yine, but. Kerani, you too. Gyakargi Namdru, Indian Airplanes. Legung la, office at. Katri Nangdang, asking doing immediately or right away or as soon as possible or as soon as convenient. is how I'm going to translate tang, I think, from now on. But immediately is just one word, so I'm going to leave it as immediately as a reminder. But please ask at the Indian Airlines office. And then you could add as soon as convenient for you, if you prefer. Paul. Paul. Ngani as to. You don't need the dash in between there. There we go. Namdru, airplane. Ma shungo, not straddling. Full stop. Paul, let's not go by plane. Motre, vehicles. Nangla, in at. Dro, going. Let's go by car. Sa tok ne, land upon, from by. Drona, going if. Drosong, expense, young also. Chungire, small being. La, acknowledging. Nangwa, appearance, young also. Kigire, pleasant being. By land, it's cheaper and also more interesting. Te, that. Demba, true. Re, being. That's true. Sa tok ne, land upon, from by. Drona, going if. Lamkar, way on. Gyakar, India. Tongseb, villages. Mangbo, many. Tongire, perceiving being. By land, you'll see a lot of Indian villages along the way. Sakpartu, particular at. Dharamsala, Dharamsala. Malib, while not arriving. Tsam, about. Kongla, before at. Tumbo, elevation. Chik, one. Zeg, climbing. Gu, needing. Re, being. So I'm just going to highlight here. Malib, tsam, kongla. While not arriving, about, before at. You'll notice that ma, here I put while not, simply because in English, when you think about before or just before, we don't think about not arriving yet. We think about while still not yet arriving. So I added the while because for me, mentally, I just find it much easier to think about not yet arrived before doing something doesn't really make sense in English. Whereas while still not yet arriving there before doing something makes more sense. Anyway, if just as you work through it, you hopefully you'll find that useful as a mental construction to think about. In particular, just before you get to Dharamsala, you have a steep climb. So again, in this context, the ma is while not and not just not. And it's very useful in this kind of context. Tetu, that time. And we don't need the dash here. That time. Motre, cars or vehicles. Gikung, window. Ne, from. Tena, looking if. Demo, view. Chembo, big. Sheda, very. Yore, existing being. If you look out the window then, there's a great view. Te gangla, that's on top of at. Chigjena, something doing if, that is maybe. Motre nangla, vehicles in at. Pöge tok, Tibet speaking by means of. Kecha shero, speaking friend. Pöba, chik, Tibetan 1, tugyong, meeting coming. What's more, on the bus, you might meet a Tibetan to be a Tibetan speaking partner. Dharamsalar, Dharamsalaat, Gyalwa, Victor, Rinpoche, Precious's, Potang, residence, Tang, and He is Tibet. Sorry, I forgot the Tibet in here. Oop. Senchul, refugee. Shung, government, or Shungi, governments. Legung, offices. Matok, not including. Shen, others. Taya, seeing to. Kelchewa, important-er or more important. Kare kare, what. Plural, again, that's meaning plural. Yore, existing being. So in Dharamsala, aside from the Dalai Lama's residence and the Tibetan refugee government offices, what is there to see? Dharamsala la, Dharamsala at. Kelchewa, important-er or more important. Hutuk, Tibet children. Kimdei, residential school. Kimdei Lobta is the residential school, both together. Tekananjin, similarly. Sherik, cultural. Dökar, theater. Tokpa, association. Rik, logic. Lam, path. Lobta, school. Namgyel, monarch. Tatsang, monastic college. Pögi Penzukang, Tibetan library. Chemmo, great. Che, listed. Yore, existing being. The important spots in Dharamsala are the Tibetan Children's Village, or TCV school, the Tibetan Institute for Performing Arts, or TIPA, the Institute for Dialectic Studies, Namgyal Monastery, and the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, or LTWA. Kyeranyi, you too. Tugnang, interest. Yöna, existing F. Penzukangla, library at. Kigyawa Tsor, foreigners too. Pögi Geik Tang, Tibetan language and. Rigshung, culture. Nangche, Buddhism. Je, listing. Lobgyore, learning existing being. If you're interested, the library has classes for foreigners on Tibetan language, culture, and Buddhism. Ale, yes, Ribe, being. Is that right? Chena, doing if. Ngani, us too. Dharamsalar, Dharamsala too. Ngepartu, definitely. Droyiyin, going being. Then we'll definitely be going to Dharamsala. Mary, Mary. Ta, now. Ngani, us too. Gongbashu, leave taking. Ge is the question mark. Gongbashuge, leave taking. Mary, shall we go now? Or shall we take our leave now? Which is a little bit more formal. Ale, oh yes. Nge, me by. Kachi, question. Shuya, asking to. Chik, one. Le, only. Shak, certainty. Oh, I do have just one more question. Dharamsalar, Dharamsalaat, Pumi, Tibetan peoples or Tibet peoples. Shikar, native encampment. Yöse, existing lands. Sacha, place. Tela, that for. Kare, what? Sergiyore, declaring existing being or calling existing being, in this case. What's the Tibetan community area in Dharamsala called? So we can change this, declaring. We can change that to calling. I guess that's more helpful in this context. Molo Genji, MacLeod Ganj. Sergiyore, calling existing being. It's called MacLeod Ganj. Ale, oh yes. Kirani, you too. Gyakarla, India too. Ma Pibgonla, while not going before at. Nga chik mi one. Tuk nange, meeting doing. Oh, by the way, before you leave for India, would you come see me? Ngar, I at or me at. Dharamsala la, Dharamsala for. Yige, letter. Kelchembo, important. Shik a. Kurgyu, sending for to. Ye, existing. I have a very important letter to send to Dharamsala. Kerani, you too. Oh, I forgot there's a spelling mistake here. We need a pao in front of here. I'll just make that here. That should be a pao. Sana, dana, manam, to make taking up. Nam, taking up. Tubgirebe, tubgireba. Taking up able being. Nam tubgireba, taking up able being. You'll be able to take it, right? La, acknowledging. Yindayin, being and being, literally. Yes, of course. Being and being is always of course, if you just want to remember it that way. Tujiche, compassion, great. Thank you. You're very kind. Jokbo, quick. Gel, meeting. Yong, coming. See you soon. So I hope you found this helpful. It's a bit long. I will try to add maybe some sections into the video to help you track your way through it. And again, I will make sure that everything is in the resources so that you can follow along at your own pace and make your own notes. Thank you so much for listening.